welcome. Welcome to our webinar today. We will kick off as people start to come in and join the webinar today. So just to say a big welcome to our first careers webinar for 2022 at the College of Law on this very, very important topic, how to manage your workload and thrive. My name is Susan Pincus and I am the National Careers Professional based in Melbourne and am excited to have you all tune in online today. Each month, we deliver a 1-hour live webinar on various topics designed to help you as undergraduate law students, as well as PLTs and alumni to kickstart your careers as you transition into the legal profession. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are sitting at this time and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I am joined this afternoon by Graham Hass, who is a solicitor with over 20 years experience, welcome Graham, and a senior lecturer at the college. He has a wealth of experience, having worked as a commercial lawyer for a national firm, a suburban general practitioner, as well as being heavily involved in community legal centres. Graham is an integral part of the senior lecturing team at the College of Law in Queensland, having lectured at the college since 2006. He has a particular interest in mentoring lawyers in professional skills and practitioner wellbeing. Graham is a mental health first aid instructor and has extensive experience delivering these courses to the profession. In speaking about time management today, you will learn about the importance of managing your time to reduce feeling overwhelmed and how to balance your demands as a critical step in managing your own health. Before I pass over to Graham, just a few general housekeeping matters. To get the most out of the session, we really suggest that you minimise those distractions. So particularly with your emails and your phone. So maybe put your phone out of sight and turn off your emails. Don't look at them. We've allocated 15 minutes of question time at the end of the session. So about 1:15, we can, if you can put your questions into the Q&A and we can fire away Graham and ask lots of different questions. And if you also have some burning questions during the session, Graham, you're okay to put those into the chat as well. So we can take questions that way as well. So just so that you know, we record all the webinars and we'll be sharing the recording of this session in the next week or so. And when you get that recording, you'll also be asked if you could complete a feedback survey on the webinar today. So that would be great if you could do that and also make any other suggestions for other webinars. So enough from me and over to you, Graham.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Susan, and welcome everybody. And thanks for joining us today. A lot of pressure on me. I want to run a presentation today that will give you some hints and ideas and tips as to how to enjoy your day-to-day working lives and study lives a whole lot more without that huge layer of stress and anxiety that so many of us carry with us. So what can you do on a daily basis to try and get more out of the day and enjoy that day more and feel more productive and more satisfied at the end of it all? That's my humble goal for today. As Susan said, as we go through, please don't hesitate to make any comments, ask any questions, put them in the chat box. I may not be able to look at them straight away, but eventually I'll find my way there and respond to those, or Susan will bring those to my attention, or we'll deal with them all at the end. So without further ado, let's get into this session on time management. I want to start by really introducing our traditional approach to time management and the way that many of us approach our workloads and the emotion that relates to that. And then I want to get into some key steps that we can all take to manage our time a whole lot better and get a whole lot more out of our day. So if you'll just bear with me, I'll have a little chat with you initially for the first minute or two, and then we'll get into some things that a case study that I think you'll find pretty interesting, and some things we can do to manage our time a whole lot better. So if you're anything like me, basically we're just trying to hold it together most days. Okay, we go from one spot fire to the next. But once or twice a year, you might actually have a remarkable moment where you feel like you're on top of your work and you feel like your things are in control, but that might only be once or twice a year. Then even more rarely, I'll look back and think, actually, I did a good job with that one. But the rest of the time, there's a lot of anxiety and fear. I'm fully aware of the things that I haven't done, the things that I did, but I should have done better as well. Time management is all about emotion, and I want to talk about that today. And can you guess what that primary emotion is for the average person in their time management? It's fear. Okay. The suggestion is that lawyers are primarily motivated by fear. If we don't have a deadline, it doesn't get done. But we all tend to do this as high achievers and as perfectionists. Okay. It's not just me, it's probably going to be most of you as well, I'm guessing. But we have these fears that keep us going. Right. What are those fears? Fears of getting found out, the imposter syndrome that's very common with professionals, the sense that I've just barely managed to fool everybody. Okay. I don't want people to find out how little I know. This imposter syndrome. I live waiting for one thing to happen, then everyone's going to find out that really I was just bluffing my way through these things. Fear of not being good enough, fear of not being up to scratch, fear of failing, fear of letting people down, fear of getting sued, fear of a complaint being made to the regulators, okay, fear of losing my job. So that insecurity can drive us. So we might go the extra mile to somehow make up for those fears and insecurities. We'll take on more work than we can handle. We set unreasonably high expectations for ourselves and unrealistic goals. We beat ourselves up when we don't meet our own expectations. And when we do meet those expectations, we say to ourselves, well, I should have pushed myself further. I should have aimed higher, and I'm going to have to keep doing this. So we don't really pay any respect to our limits, no respect to what we need to do to look after ourselves. It's gotten us this far, makes us good at what we do to an extent. But all of that comes at a price, okay? Our own health and our well-being and our ability to perform. Think about it. When you wake up of a morning, how are you feeling in the morning? You've got a day ahead of you. Okay, on the average day, are you dreading the day ahead of you? Are you relishing the opportunities it has? Are you nervous about what might be ahead? Okay, but have a think about that emotion that often kicks in first thing in the morning before we even get out of bed. I'm going to talk about how we can manage that hopefully a little bit more effectively later on today. Okay, and all of that stress and pressure also affects our efficiency and productivity at work, but also relationships with the people in our lives that matter. So many of us largely motivated by fear, this underlying sense that we're going to get found out one day. If we'd rather enjoy our days, what can we do about it? Imagine not carrying around all of that anxiety and all of those nerves. So for your average lawyer, time famine is their number one complaint, and it relates back to not being able to control your time or your workload. So that's what we're going to talk about today. About half of the profession will tell you their work schedules allow them too little time for their families or for themselves, and many leave practice as a result. A startling figure, by about 5 years after admission, 50% of lawyers will no longer be working as lawyers. Some figures go up as high as 70. Okay. And as I say, their biggest complaint is not having enough time in the day to do things. Okay. We just keep held this strongly held belief that if we just keep working harder, we'll catch up. Okay. If we're getting behind, we've got to work faster. Okay, work longer, do more things at once, work into the night, skip the exercise, eat lunch at your desks, miss dinner with your family and your friends. Okay, it doesn't work well for most lawyers, and it's resulted in a lot of burnout and dissatisfaction with the practice of law that we see today. So you might catch up in the short term, but in the long run, you're never caught up. Okay, so just more late nights, more meals at your desk, more frustration. Okay, so what can we do about all of that? We've identified the problem. What could we do if we wanted to enjoy our day-to-day working lives more, and you study more? What could we do about that? That's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to start with this scenario. Okay, I want you to imagine yourselves, all right? You're working as a chef in a local chef or a cook. I think we call you a cook in a local cafe. Okay, local Vietnamese cafe. You're going to be a cook. So you're off to work one morning. Okay, you get into work. It's 9 a.m. 12 o'clock, you know, you've got a group of 15 people coming in. You're all by yourself. You have to run the place by yourself. You know, you've got these people coming in at midday for lunch. They're going to order some noodles. However, when you get to work, the place is a mess. Okay. The shelves are empty. The fridge is empty. So you've got notifications coming through on your phone. You put a photo of your breakfast, your bacon and eggs on Instagram this morning, and you're getting notifications through on that. No one else to help you. I want you to think about what would you do in that situation? Arriving at work in the morning, what's the first thing you might do in that situation? Okay, by all means, put it in the chat box if you want to make a comment there. But just think about first thing you do. Kitchen's a mess. You need to do the shopping. You've got people coming in for lunch, and it's all on you. What might you do to manage that situation? Chat box if you're feeling brave. But I'm guessing for a lot of you, and actually think about how you feel about that scenario. Do you feel excited? Wow, this is an opportunity. I'm really going to enjoy this. Or is there a sense of dread there? Okay, is there a sense of fear and anxiety? Stay calm is good. Okay, we've got some chat. We've got some messages coming through. Stay calm's a good starter. Okay, start small. Do one thing at a time. Order groceries online. Okay, and hopefully they'll get there in time. Anybody else as to how you might start your day? Have a think about it. Okay, and really think about how you reacted to that scenario. Was it anxiety and fear, or was it fantastic? This is going to be a great challenge. I'm going to enjoy this. Okay, have a strong coffee. Absolutely, every day should start with a strong, albeit decaf coffee. I guess what I want to suggest there is a lot of you will have started your day by doing the cleaning, call other people in, go do your shopping. All right. The very first thing we should do to start the day is come up with a plan. And that's really one of the key themes of today. We'll be talking about that. Okay. So here's our plan for the day as I try and load up my PowerPoints. What are we going to do today? Okay. We're going to talk about that emotion of time management. Okay. Come back. There we go. Talk about the emotion of time management, give you some simple and very practical strategies to manage your time more effectively on a daily basis, and talk through what I think are the 3 steps to effective time management. Let's get into it. Okay, so how do we time manage traditionally? You might just go with whatever is causing you the most stress. Okay, which bomb is ticking most loudly on your desk? What do you have coming up in the short term? For many of us, we procrastinate. So you don't actually do anything until you get close to that deadline. And we're going to talk about procrastination and why we procrastinate, what the procrastinators can do about that. So the very first step, okay, to time management, in my mind, is to take control and accept responsibility. Okay, you can't blame other people. I hear people use the phrase, "I don't have time for that." Okay. Well, what you're really saying, we've all got the same amount of time. What you're really saying when you say you don't have time for something is that it's not a priority for me. Okay. So next time you got to say, I don't have time for that, I really want you to reframe that as that's not a priority for me, because you get to decide what your priorities are on a daily basis. Okay. What you'll find is that solicitors in particular have higher rates of mental illness and particularly anxiety and depression, substance abuse than the rest of the population. And one of the leading causes for this is this concept of low decision latitude, not feeling like I have much say or control over my workload. I'm jumping through everybody else's hoops. So when we feel like we have low decision latitude in a situation, that can lead to depression and anxiety. Whereas if you stop being a victim of time and decide, I'm going to take control of my day, I'm going to manage my time. Okay, well, just that step alone will have a significant impact on your own well-being, and because you're now taking control of that situation. So doing something on a daily basis to manage your time will make you feel like you've got more control. Okay, and that's really good for your mental health. So that perception of control is actually critical. We can be very reactive as a profession in practice, okay? We deal with whatever the latest phone call is or whichever client seems most stressed. So reactive would be coming into that kitchen scenario of a morning when you've got customers coming in, and reactive is cleaning up the mess from the night before. In the world of office work, that can be dealing with whatever the phone messages are that have just come in, or dealing with whatever the emails that have just come in. So somebody else has control in that situation. They call you, you respond. They email you, you respond. So it can be very reactive. What we want to do is be more proactive as a profession. Okay, so what does that entail? Well, that means being on the front foot with client communications and conversations you have with other people in the office about your workload. We'll talk about workloads and managing those. But proactive is letting the client know ahead of time if things might be delayed, not sitting and waiting for the phone to ring and then hoping they're not going to call you and then having to explain why you haven't done something. So getting on the phone and saying to a client, I know I promised I'd have this to you today. I'm going to have that to you in a couple of days. Things have gotten away from me. My apologies. Okay. Proactive is, having those conversations with people who are giving you work in the workplace about how much work you have on and whether or not you're going to be able to manage that. Proactive is managing your time on a daily basis, okay, in a way that's going to allow you to more effectively work through your workload. So step one, don't be a victim of time. Next time you go to say, I don't have time for it, reframe it as that's not a priority for me, and look to take control of your time on a daily basis. We'll talk about how to do that. Okay. The next step, okay, is knowing yourself. Okay, we're all very different. We've got different tendencies. All right, we need to know what our own time management tendencies might be. Okay, let's see if any of these sound familiar to you. The perfectionists, well, for a lot of people in higher education, you've got those perfectionist tendencies. So how does that play out in time management? Well, as a perfectionist, what you do is rarely going to be good enough in your eyes, and it's rarely going to give you any satisfaction or joy. So when it comes time to starting a task or a challenge that you might have, the perfectionist will think, well, there's no payoff for me here. I'm not going to be good enough. I'm not going to end up addressing the United Nations. There aren't going to be people in tears at how brilliant my work has been. So why bother starting this thing? So the perfectionist will set such unreasonable expectations that they will procrastinate and they won't be good enough. So they'll put off starting something. Okay. And then the fear gets bigger and bigger until eventually you have to get a start. And then the self-loathing kicks in. Because here I go again, I've put it off to the last moment. Okay, so what do perfectionists need to do? Set more reasonable expectations for yourself, okay? Give yourself a break. Aim for excellent, not perfection, okay? Aim for good enough. Good enough is the key phrase, the key antidote for the perfectionist. Aim for good enough. Identify areas of your life where good enough should be applicable, okay? And just get a start on something somewhere, all right? The all or nothing people, they won't start a job unless they can do it all in one sitting. Okay, so things will be put off. So what you need to do in that situation is just give yourself permission or break things up into smaller pieces, more manageable tasks. Okay, you don't need to spend 5 hours at once doing a job. You could spend half an hour over a series of days or weeks and get it done in a more manageable way, but just get a start. The busy bees as well. Okay, the busy bees, always busy, always doing something, no particular order, not very good at prioritizing. All right. And so for many of us, prioritizing, knowing how to prioritize is a real challenge. What does the busy bee need to do? Like I say, as we go through these steps, the busy bee needs to come up with a plan for the day and prioritize more effectively. Have conversations with people you're working for, with clients, about the order in which you might be doing something and their timing expectations. The yes people, okay? The yes people are lovely people. They're very sociable, very thoughtful, generous people, but they struggle to say no when anyone asks them to do something. Some of you might be able to relate to this. Yes, people struggle to say no. And then guess what happens to the yes people? They take on too much work, they can't manage, then they fall apart, okay? And there are consequences for everybody. So eventually you learn, if you're one of those yes people, you learn that you have to get good at saying no to people. because we've got design specifications. There are only so many hours in the day. There's only so many things that we can do. So just saying yes to everybody, when you say yes to one thing, you're inherently saying no to something else. But you should get to decide what your priorities are and what you intend to do. So the yes people need to get good at prioritizing and saying no, and accepting that we all have boundaries. Okay. The deadline deniers, another reason to procrastinate. All right, this feels yucky. I've got this thing due in a couple of weeks' time. That's causing me stress and anxiety. I don't like that feeling. That's yucky. No deadline. I'm going to pretend that it doesn't exist. Okay, and then it gets closer and closer until you can't avoid, but actually getting a start on it. Okay, you can't deny it anymore. So the deadline deniers need to be more disciplined, as we all do with our time management. Okay, come up with a plan, come up with a daily timetable, and by coming up with that plan, making yourself more aware that that deadline is real and it does exist. All right, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here and have a quick look at the, got some comments coming through. Yeah, absolutely, 100 busy bees out there. Okay. The best is the enemy of the good, and for a lot of us, that's a real battle, overcoming our perfectionist tendencies. Okay, it can be good, but it comes at a high price for us. So here's how procrastination works. Let's have a little looky. So you've got a deadline coming up, might be an exam, might be an assessment, whatever it is. Have I got time to procrastinate? Hell yes, we love that. So we'll put it off. We won't worry about it. Okay. We go with something that's more interesting or easier. That's often a tendency as well. Some people just love the thrill of leaving it to the last moment and the adrenaline rush. Okay. Well, that's going to be fraught because you're not going to be putting in your best effort right at the last moment. There's healthy procrastination when you're considering things and you're thinking things through. But if you're just putting things off and it's not serving any purpose, okay, then we need to address that. So we'll procrastinate if there's something easier or more interesting generally. You wait for more fear to come along. When that fear comes along and kicks you in the pants, you start, the self-loathing kicks in. Here I go again. I've done it again, left it to the last moment. I'm not going to be able to do a good job. Okay. So keep an eye out for that if you tend to procrastinate. We've talked about some of these solutions already. Be aware of it. Understand why you procrastinate. Is it because you love the fear? Is it because your job you're going to do is not going to be good enough? There's no payoff for you? Is it because you need to do everything at once? Be aware of why you might procrastinate. Okay. Give yourself a break. Set more reasonable expectations. Get a start. Okay. Anywhere. Break it up into smaller pieces. And meet inspiration halfway. Don't expect to be overcome with feelings of inspiration before you get a start on a job. Just get a start on it. And break it up into little more manageable bits, as we've said. 7 minutes of pain is an interesting one. What's that about? I'll share it with you. Not that I've ever used it or heard of anyone using it, but it's entertaining. So the suggestion is, we've got this file that you're working on and you haven't been able to get a start because you've been procrastinating. Okay. Then what you do is you set that file in front of you for 7 minutes and you don't do anything with it. You just leave it sit there and you look at it for 7 minutes and you don't do anything. And by the end of that 7 minute period, you're so frustrated that you haven't been able to do anything, you might actually get a start. Okay. So yes, that's one tactic. Okay. The other thing we need to be aware of is, that runs interference with our time management are the distractions. Okay. Think about when you're studying, when you're working, what are some of the things that might distract you? Okay. What are those distractions? Put them in the chat box if you can think of something that might be a distraction to you. For a lot of us, it's emails. You'll be working on something and then a notification comes through. It might be social media. It might be emails. And then you stop whatever you're working on and now pay attention to that email or the notification or the telephone call. The interesting thing about that is that if you're working on a matter or a file or you're studying something, okay, once you're distracted, it's going to take you 20 minutes to get your head back to where it was originally. Okay, so distractions can have a profound impact on your ability to get the job done. So we need to take steps to minimize those distractions. So yeah, what can we do in that regard? So our beloved phones that are always binging and dinging and telling us that we need to pay attention to something else. Can you turn off notifications? Can you put those notifications to sleep for a while? Can you leave your phone in another room if that's your primary source of distraction? Okay. So with the telephone calls, again, if you're in an office, can you have somebody taking messages on your behalf and say, listen, these are the VIPs, these are the ones that I'll talk to, but everyone else, we need to put them on hold and I'll call them back later on in the day. Leave phone messages outside of your office. When you call somebody, okay, have an agenda, know what points you actually want to discuss when you call them so you can be a bit more succinct. And then end the conversation when it's time to end the conversation. And I've recently learned the way to end a conversation politely is you say something along the lines of, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I better let you go. Something along those lines, which is in effect saying, I don't want to talk to you anymore, but you make it polite and you say, I can't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much. When you call somebody on the phone, if they're not available, let them know what time they can call you back, because there might be hours of the day that you're more available to take phone calls after 3 o'clock, after 1 o'clock, whatever it might be. So try and take that control back in relation to the things that distract you. Okay. Here we go. We've got some chat comments. Family members, annoying emails from service providers. Family members, absolutely. Work from home. That's a big one. What do we do when you've got kids running around the place? You let them know there are times to come and talk to me. There are times to not interrupt me. Come and interrupt me if the kitchen's on fire. Okay. If you're choking on a chicken bone, don't come in and interrupt me because your favorite app on your phone needs updating or isn't working. So having those conversations with people and managing their time as well, keeping them occupied in the house if it's kids that you've got. But that's a whole nother discussion to be had. Okay. Family members at home, workmates in the office. Your distraction may be that person who comes and stands in the doorway of your office and has a chat. And if we're honest with ourselves, sometimes that's us talking to other people, taking up their time. So just be aware, those workplace conversations, yes, we're social creatures. Yes, we need to feel connected and we need to communicate. But if if you walk into someone's office, you don't know how busy or stressed they might be. They might just be being polite and not have it in them to say, get out, I'm really stressed at the moment, I'm trying to do some work. But just be aware of yourself, okay? To what extent am I distracting other people potentially? Have you got a second for a chat? If someone comes into your office and stands in the doorway, what can you do in that situation? Oh, listen, I'm really sorry. I'm in the middle of something crazy here. Can I come and have a chat with you in half an hour or in an hour? And don't be afraid to let people know that you're really busy, okay? And just keep a check on yourself if you're that person who might be distracting others as well. Separate office, bought a gigantic table to study on, which only fits in the dining room. There we go. So be aware of what your distractions might be and manage them. For some of you, it might be the cookie jar, it might be the fridge, it might be cans of soft drink or something like that. So what can you do in that regard? Use them as little rewards, the little things that distract you. It might be checking the social media, it might be having a biscuit, whatever it is, okay, use them as little rewards. So if you've been sitting there for 45 minutes or an hour at your desk and you need to get up and have a stretch, well, set that as you're coming up with your plan for the day. Okay, once you've done something or accomplished a task, go reward yourself. And that might be biscuit jar or a Vegemite on toast or whatever it is. Okay, so be aware of the things that distract you throughout the day. Okay, and have a think about how you can manage those distractions. What do we know about law students? Or students in general, okay, at uni? We got good news, okay? Great work ethic, great desire for organisation and structure. They are some of the strengths, okay? Room for improvement, okay? Here are our challenges. For your average uni student, okay, you don't have a routine. Remember, that's one of my great frustrations of university. You wake up in the morning and everything between waking up and going to bed is potential time when you could be studying, okay? It's just an endless opportunity to study and work more, and there's no real boundaries there. There's no real routine. So what can we do in that situation? Even when you're not studying, you feel guilty because you feel like you should be studying or someone else is studying more. So what can you do? You need a routine. They suggest you should treat study like a day job. 9 to 5, come up with your plan for the day, or 10 till 6 or whatever hours you want to work. Come up with your plan today for the day. Treat it as a 9 to 5 job. Okay. Come up with a timetable and structure, and that will make you more efficient, because instead of having 14 hours to do something, you've given yourself an 8-hour window. So you're more likely to be disciplined and work through that if you've timetabled it. So come up with a daily routine. Students are great at, they become, often you have these heavily weighted exams at the end of the semester. So you're very much focused on the future. You're not good at focusing on the here and now and what you need to do in the here and now, because you're so caught up in this stress about what's happening down the track. And we don't do a great job of planning in advance. Okay. So what can we do? Come up with your daily routine. Okay. Really focus on each day. What can I achieve today? All right. We're going to talk about how to come up with that routine and goal setting. And what you want to do at the start of the day is really think to yourself, imagine yourself at the end of the day going, I've had a great day, I've been successful, and then start planning it so you can achieve that. That's on a daily basis. But before we get to planning our days and setting goals, what you really need to think about is the big picture in your life. Okay. What's important to me? What gives meaning to my life? Okay. What are my values? All right. What is going to get me out of bed of a morning when I've got a tough day ahead of me? Okay. When the stress is there, what is going to motivate me to keep going? And that really comes back to what gives meaning to your life and what your values are. It's not going to be money. Once all the studies tell us that once you've got enough money to pay the bills, okay, then anything beyond that isn't really going to make you much happier. Years ago, there was a study out of, I think it was Stanford in the United States, that said any more than 80 grand doesn't affect anyone's happiness. Probably have to index that up to 100 or something like that now, but the money's not necessarily going to keep you motivated on a daily basis. So what gives meaning to my life? What are my values? For many of you, it will be your family, okay, and raising children. For some people, you might get meaning out of helping others. That might be one of the reasons you got into your studies. How can I help other people and make a profound impact on people's lives? But that's your starting point. Okay, what's going to give meaning to my life? What are my values? Where do I want to be in 20 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? Where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, 1 week, 1 day? Once you've figured out what your goals are in the big picture, you start planning your life accordingly, your long-term, medium-term, and short-term goals. Okay. You start planning those goals, and then on a daily basis, you start to plan how you can achieve those goals. Professional in the workplace, but also personal, every bit as much. What are your personal goals? Okay. Health-wise, relationship-wise, whatever it might be, learning, travel, all of that sort of stuff. What are your own personal goals? Because your time management on a daily basis should be about achieving both, yes, your working and also your professional, but also your personal goals as well. And I think Susan might be able to talk to us a little bit about, show us some examples of what goal setting might look like. Okay.
That's right. Thanks, Graham, for that. Just give me 1 minute and I will get my PowerPoint presentation and I can show you what that looks like.
No worries at all. So just refreshing for the law students, okay? Come up with you need to be planning your day, put boundaries in place. Just don't treat it like a job, a 9 to 5, okay? Put boundaries in place. That'll make you more disciplined and more likely to do your work more efficiently, okay? But you got to think, where do I want to be? 20, 30 years, what do I want to achieve? What's important to me in my life? What's going to keep me getting out of bed on the bad days? Over to you, Susan.
Okay, so this one here I have done specifically for university students, and then I've done another one for PLT students, recognising that we will have possibly both in our audience today. So the first one is aimed at university students, and this is just an example of something that I put together, particularly when I was working in a law school at a university, and I was working with students all the time and helping them with their employability and how they could prepare themselves to present to the job market and how they could kind of get a bit of a competitive edge. And I noticed that students tend to be very much just in time. So they can just get caught up in life. They can get caught up in working part-time in other areas apart from law because they obviously need to pay their bills. They might have families that they're juggling, extracurricular activities. So totally understand it. Everyone is busy. However, it is important to almost like work backwards. So when you're at university and you're starting off, typically I would suggest that students start doing things related to law, if they can, as early as first year, second semester. So these might be just some examples of some smart goals. So one of them might be around trying to pick up some part-time law experience so that you can start building some foundational legal skills, whether it be legal drafting, research skills, that type of thing. So the action around that goal would be, all right, well, I need to prepare a script of what I'm going to say. So how am I going to actually put myself out there and make contact with perhaps a suburban law firm or a community legal centre, and what am I going to say to them? So putting your action together, and that would incorporate like who are those organisations I'm going to contact, and then when are the dates for that. So putting some actual micro achievable goals there. Another one might be around, well, I'm not really sure what areas I want to practice in. I'm a little bit unsure. There's so many different areas I'm interested in, or I'm only interested in one. So by going out and doing some informational interviews where you actually go and have a informed and purposeful conversation with a lawyer or a barrister or someone that works in the field, you can actually start to ask some questions to get that understanding. So write down your list of questions. What do you want to know? Put your pitch together when you introduce yourself. So how do you actually meet that person? What do you say to them? And always follow up with a thank you email as well. The next thing might be, all right, my presentation skills are a little bit like they need to be worked on. I feel a little bit uncomfortable presenting or getting up and talking in front of people. So why not get involved in something like mooting, which is always offered at universities. If you feel like that's too big a step, make a micro step where maybe you get involved in the administration behind organising the moot, where you can kind of observe and be watching what goes on before you're actually up there presenting. So, you know, look into your mooting competitions, find out when the times are, and think about kind of the skills that you're going to work on. So that's an example of a university student. Now, if you finished your law degree and you're now doing a PLT, these are the types of things that I would be recommending, some typical kind of goals. So one of them is to start working on your work experience that meets PLT requirements. So what actually constitutes PLT work experience? So that involves actually reading up and understanding what your options are. Looking at the jobs board on the College of Law, they're always advertising PLT opportunities. Putting together a business case as to what's in it for an employer to let you come into their organisation and do some work experience with them. Another one might be around starting to further develop and connect with the profession and start building those relationships. So do those early. Joining a law society, perhaps joining one of the committees that interests you. Look into some special interest groups around like Centre of Legal Innovation if you're interested in that area, or the Legal Forecast if you're interested in technology. There's a number of different interest groups there. And then the opportunity to start looking into mentoring programs. They have mentoring programs often at like through the college. We're putting together a mentor program right now. There's also mentor programs through the law societies. There's women mentor programs, etc. So start kind of doing your research early. So that's basically where I might just leave it and pass it back to you, Graham.
Really, really good advice, Susan. Where were you at the start of my career when I needed you? I could have been driving a really expensive car and retired right now, but that's great advice. And
thank you.
Keeping in mind those goals are about you and what you all want to achieve. Okay, they're about timetabling so that you can timetable your day in a way that works for you. Okay, let's talk about the specifics of how to do that now. So remember, we talked about working in the cafe, getting into work, place is a mess, etc., etc. Well, this sort of ties in with the Anthony Bourdain, his approach to time managing. Okay, and what he said in his book Kitchen Confidential is this. Right, he talked about this thing called the mise en place, a French phrase meaning having everything in its right place. So what he would say is the very first thing you want to do when you get to the kitchen of a day is spend 10 or 15 minutes planning your day. Okay, if you think you don't have time to plan your day, you're kidding yourself, because you'll make it up throughout the day as you become more efficient. So that's the suggestion. First thing we want to do when we get to our Vietnamese cafe is not clean up a mess or make phone calls or go shopping. Is come up with a written plan for the day. That's what we want to be doing at work every day. So what are some key things to keep in mind? And Susan's already illustrated some of these points. Be precise. That's what the previous activity was all about, coming up with specific goals. If we're too general, we don't know when we've actually done what we want to, and we don't even know what we want to do. For instance, I've got a file to work on, Smith file. If I just write my daily plan, work on Smith file, well, what does that mean? Okay, but if I say draft letter of demand or draft a pleading, well, when I've done that, I get to give myself that glorious tick or put a line through it, and I have that sense of accomplishment. I know what I've done. So be precise about it, okay, about what you need to do. Estimate the time required to do that task. The suggestion is you're better off estimating time poorly than not estimating time at all. Why? Because when we give ourselves boundaries, we become more disciplined and efficient. Okay, so if I've got a not so busy day and I can afford to procrastinate and put things off and be distracted, then I'll do that. But if I come up with a timetable for the day that makes me get that job done, okay, then I'll be more disciplined. Think about it. When you are going on holidays, okay, imagine you're at work or you've got something to do, but you're about to go on leave. How much work do you get done on that last day before you go on holidays? An incredible amount of work, okay, because you've got yourself a real deadline. So estimate time, okay, and come up as part of your daily plan. And I'll show you an example of how to do that. And prioritize, all right? So you've got to be precise about what you need to do. Try and estimate the time that task might take. And now we need to prioritize. Now we know all of the work that we have on. We now need to figure out what order that should be done in. How do you do that? For young lawyers, that can be challenging, but it should be a conversation you're having with your supervisors. They've got an obligation to supervise you, and that should entail telling you the order in which things should be done. If you've got a boss that shrugs their shoulders and just says, just do it all, I don't care, well, you haven't got a great boss there, okay? So have that conversation with your boss. I've heard some employers say they don't trust young lawyers who don't come to them for help and don't have that conversation with them because they make mistakes and stuff things up. So have that regular conversation with the people you're working with. It might be other people in the office that are giving you files. Let them know, this is what I've got on my desk. This is the order I'm doing things in. If there's a conflict there, go and have a chat with your supervisor. All right, what should I do? This is what I've got on. What order should I be doing this in? Have that conversation with your clients as well, just letting you know this is your expectation, or as to timing, this is when I'll be able to get the job done. Have that conversation with other people in the office that you're working with. Okay. And guess what? You're going to come up with a plan, list of things you need to do. You'll estimate time. You'll come up, you'll prioritize, you'll timetable it for the day. And then guess what? As often as not, if not more often than not, your plan will be bombed. Someone will come into your office. I've just come up with my beautiful plan for the day. I'm feeling happy. I've got decision latitude. Someone comes into my office. No, Graham, I need you to do this now. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. And that's going to happen. Well, guess what? Firstly, be aware of how you react to that. Chances are it's an emotional reaction. It's stress, it's fear, it's anxiety, because you were able to cope with your timetable, but now someone's just bombed your timetable, okay? And now you're thinking, well, I don't know if I've got the resources to cope with this now. And that's where the anxiety and the stress comes from. But guess what we'd have to do in that situation? Exactly what we did, those 3 steps we've talked about initially. Firstly, be aware of how you've reacted to it. Okay, I'm flipping out here. I need to deal with this. All right. But then you just need to work through these steps. I have to take control of this situation. I'm going to change my plan. I'm going to alter my daily timetable. I'm going to reprioritize things. But by doing that, taking control again, okay, you're going to feel more in control of the situation, feel a whole lot happier, and your anxiety levels will be reduced. So be precise about what you need to do. Estimate time, figure out the priorities, and then when inevitably someone comes in and bombs that plan, just change your plan, figure out, be mindful of how you're reacting to it, but then just adapt your plan accordingly, okay? All right, so the frog. If we were doing this face-to-face, I'd be giving you green frog lollies right now as a form of bribe, perhaps, but there's a quote. So what's this about? Eat the frog. Have a read of that one. Now, I am an animal lover. I'm not suggesting you should go out and find some frogs to eat. But what I'm trying to say there is that if you get that hardest task, your most difficult task, your biggest challenge of the day, if you get that out of the way first thing in the morning, okay, yes, your day can only improve, but there's another aspect to it. We're most alert and least fatigued very first thing in the morning, okay? When you arrive at work, that's when you're most switched on. Okay, so whatever your most difficult task is, that's why you need to do it first thing in the morning, because you're more able to deal with it. Don't leave the really difficult tasks to the end of the day when you're fatigued and tired. Fatigue can be a distraction as well. As we get tired as the day goes on, our mind starts to wander. So we need to manage that fatigue, regular breaks, more exercise, hopefully not more coffee. Caffeine doesn't do us any favors in that regard, other than that first one in the morning. But if you're drinking coffee all day long, there might be an issue there. So eat the frog, whatever your most difficult, challenging task is, do it first thing in the morning. And that's another reason you don't want to spend the start of your day dealing with spot fires and ticking bombs, okay? Because that's your golden period. That's when you're really switched on. So if you've come up with a plan for the day, you should be doing the most difficult tasks, not dealing with emails and phone calls and that sort of thing first thing in the morning. That's my suggestion on that front. What else can we do? Okay, from time to time, you need to schedule a catch-up day. So there's all these little things that we put off and we don't deal with. They might be administrative tasks or minor things that we just haven't got around to. Well, you need a catch-up day, okay? For all the things that your files, the things that you don't give attention to, okay? Your loser files, they need attention from time to time. So have that catch-up day where you can apply time to all these things that you wouldn't have otherwise, right? And critically, make time for you. Make time for yourself. All right. As I've said, we want to be timetabling and managing our time in a way that works for us. What do I want to achieve professionally? What do I want to achieve personally? And if you timetable your day and you work more efficiently, that should give you that time that you need to catch up with your family and friends, to go and play touch rugby or soccer in the park at lunchtime, to knit a jumper, to do whatever it is, to do whatever things you need to do to make you happy. Okay, give yourself permission to do that. We don't necessarily do that very well as high achievers. We're always trying to accomplish things for other people and we're putting our own needs to the side. So my suggestion is make that time for you. Okay, we're human beings. We need that time to decompress. Some of the key takeaways from today: take control and accept responsibility of your day. Come up with a daily plan. Even doing it, I mean, ideally you can do it before you go home of an evening. Come up with your plan for the next day. Then you can hit the ground running and just get straight into your work. But at least at the start of every day, 10 or 15 minutes, what's my plan? What do I need to do? What order am I going to do it in? Know yourself. What are the things that distract me? Why, if I'm a procrastinator, why do I procrastinate? And what can I do about some of those things? We've talked about those today. Take that 10 minutes of a day to make a list, all right? Adjust your plan when people bomb that list, because when they bomb your daily plan, because that'll happen. And I really want you to have a think about what you might do differently. What can you take away from today's presentation that you might be able to do differently, all right? And while you're thinking about that, and we'll certainly open this up for questions if you have any questions, but have a think about, remember at the beginning I was talking about, how do you feel in bed of a morning as you're getting out of bed? Are you nervous and anxious about the day ahead? Are you dreading it? Or do you think this is a wonderful opportunity? And that's important because we set the tone for the day. And it's still something that I have to work through on a daily basis. I'll wake up of a morning and I'll think, oh God, what have I got ahead of me? What do I have to deal with? But that needs to be reframed, because the way you react to something that is a threat is very, very different to the way you react to something that you might see as a challenge. So for instance, think about something in your life that you enjoy doing that's a challenge for you, and you may or may not be successful at it, but it's something you enjoy doing. You don't lose sleep about it, even though it might be sewing a dress, it might be playing a game of football, it might be drawing a picture, something you love doing. You may or may not be successful, but you don't dread it. So that's the way we should be approaching our working lives, not waking up and being anxious about it, but saying, all right, well, I've got an opportunity here. I've got a challenge today. And when you have those goals in the medium and long term, then you'll know, all right, well, it might feel yucky. I have to go to court. I have to go to a settlement conference. I have to have a performance review. Yeah, that doesn't feel very pleasant, but this is going to help me achieve my longer term goals and my medium term goals. Okay. So when you wake up in the morning, be aware of how you're feeling about your day. I don't want you to be dreading it and seeing it as a threat, as a grizzly bear at the door that's come to get you. Oh no, I could get sued. I could stuff this up. I could lose the client. I stuff things up all the time. When you start to think like that, and I think a lot of us do, reframe it and say to yourself, no, this is a challenge. This is an opportunity for me. I mightn't have these skills, and I might be nervous about being able to get the job done, but either way, I'm going to learn from this situation and I'll be better at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, all of my fingers and toes will be in the same place. And hopefully I'll be a couple of steps closer to achieving some of those goals that I wanted to achieve. So figure out what's this life all about for you? What gives you meaning, and what are your values? Then you start coming up with your goals. Okay, what's going to keep you motivated? And then you start planning on a daily basis. Okay, plan in the long term, medium term, and short term. Start planning on a daily basis for you to achieve those goals, both personally and professionally. Hopefully I've been able to share some things with you today that might have been useful. Please, if you've got any questions or comments for me, the more difficult the better, put them in the chat box. No such thing as silly questions either, so please don't hesitate if there's anything that I can help you with further. Susan.
Yes, no, that was great. I just want to let you know, Graham, that I listened to your session before, and I really, really love that whole concept of reframing. And I can give an actual example where I had a day yesterday that I would probably describe as a day from hell. I had like 9 back-to-backs. I didn't even have any time for lunch. And normally I would wake up in the morning and my stomach would be churning. I'd be
exactly.
quite like anxious and like really grumpy. And yet I remember you saying, look, it has a bit of a challenge, and switch your mindset. So I did that, and I got through the day, and I actually, I felt good at the end of the day. So I think a lot of it is that feeling in control and taking that control. I think that's like a huge part of it.
Absolutely. And you're not going to suddenly, when you change your perspective on things, you're not going to be lying in a field of daffodils with butterflies and people playing a harp next to you. It doesn't suddenly become easy and wonderful, but it can just take the sting out of the tail, and you can be 15, 20% less stressed, and it just changes your framing. And what I do find, and it's because it's something that I work on very much myself, what I find is the more I do it, the better I get at it. So when you wake up in the morning, you feel dreadful, and you've gone down that track before where you've tried to change your thinking. Well, it gets easier and easier. And just start seeing things as a bit of fun or a challenge or an opportunity for you. How does this fit in with the big picture of what I want to do with my life? Thanks for the kind comments there, Caroline.
And I like that concept of as well, of like the more efficient you can kind of be at work, the more time you have to do things outside of work that kind of bring you satisfaction as well. That's also kind of quite a nice little goal there.
You need to have things outside of work. I'm adamant about that, and I think as time goes on, you appreciate that more, because if you don't have a life outside of work, or things that keep you motivated or fired up, and it might be creative things or exercise, what really motivates you and things you love outside of work, if you don't have that stuff, then work becomes everything. So when you stuff something up at work, well, that's a big part of your life, and that's a reflection on you. Whereas if you have other things going on, you can sort of keep a bit of perspective and realize, it's not really as significant as I'm thinking it might be. So you just got to have those things outside of work. Otherwise, it all just becomes too big and horrible.
Yep. Any questions from anyone? This is your chance. So just drop them into the Q&A or otherwise into chat. In the meantime, I have a question. I just wanted to know what happens in a situation where perhaps the workload itself is unrealistic. And it's not to do with how efficient you are. It's just that there's basically a ridiculous workload. What do you do in that scenario, and how do you address whether it's you that you're not working effectively, or whether it's just the design of that role?
Too much on and you need to have an ongoing conversation with the people who are giving you this work, I suspect. And if you're not, unrealistic. We have design specifications. There's only so many, only so many hours in a day, and only so many things that we can do. So you've got to have those ongoing discussions because they mightn't be aware of how much work you've got on, but making other people aware of what your workload is, and not being afraid to put your hand up. Okay, as high achievers, we're not great at that, but being able to have an open line of conversation with your boss where you can say, listen, I'm not really coping with the amount of work I've got on at the moment. Can I have some assistance, or I'm struggling? Okay, so just for a start, have that conversation with people, being able to admit that, yeah, I'm really struggling. And as a young lawyer, you can be quite efficient. So that might be happening quite a lot. But also having that conversation with yourself. We choose the sacrifices that you want to make. Some people will sacrifice their personal lives and their lives outside of work and do nothing but work. And those people might go on to become the greatest judge in the land, and they might achieve all sorts of things, but that's their choice. Whereas others might say, well, work is work, and I need a life outside of work. I want to have good relationships and time with friends and family, in which case you're probably sacrificing a bit professionally and in the workplace, perhaps, so you can have this other life. So you need to be honest with yourself about your boundaries and what's a priority for you and what isn't, I guess. But difficult questions, and I suspect we've all been there. But just be willing to ask for help, have that conversation with people, and be honest with others and yourself as to when you're not coping.
There's another question here. Can you please elaborate how I could adjust my plan when my day is bombed?
Yep. Well, you're going to have to reprioritize. If someone's come in and said, no, this is your daily plan, but I want you to do this now, well, you're going to have to figure out how to come up with a different timetable, or you're going to have to figure out what will be deprioritized so that this other thing can be prioritized. I assume that's the issue. And that, again, might require a conversation with people that you're working for or working with. But you just have to adjust your plan, assuming whatever has bombed your day now needs to take priority. Well, let's reprioritize that and figure out our timetable accordingly. Okay, however that might play out. I'm not sure if I've answered your question there, Georgia.
Yes, Georgia says yes. It's just almost 1:30. I just want to put up a last slide. And in the meantime, if anyone still does have another burning question, please feel free to continue with that. Let me just see if I can move on to the fourth slide. Yeah, so I was just going to just let you know that if you want to get in touch, please feel free to reach out. That's my email address at the College of Law. I also was just going to let you know that there is some career resources available on the College of Law website. If you just jump onto the College of Law website and go onto career resources, there's also an events page, and that's where all these events are advertised, such as the one today. Our next one is coming up on Thursday, the 28th of April at 5:30, and that one is how to leverage social media to build your professional profile. And we have a guest speaker, James, and James is a commercial litigation lawyer with a private firm, and in his spare time he has a side hustle called Copy in a File Note, where he moves around all the cafes, and he also presents some information on cases. So just look out for that one. And the last thing was that if you are a PLT student, don't forget that you are able to make a 30-minute career appointment with myself and my colleague Ruth, and that also there's a whole lot of resources on Canvas under the guide to PLT. So that is just some extra information. And unless there's any further questions, I'm just going to check. Yep.
I might just jump in and, sorry, Susan, might just jump in
sure.
and say, if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn too, and I'd love to hear from any of you. So don't hesitate to get in touch.
Yeah. So just a huge thank you, Graham, for sharing your time, your insights and your experience with us all. I think I have no doubt whatsoever that the people that have been listening today will have taken away some really, really valuable information, and they can put it into practice straight away. So yeah, don't forget to connect with us, with Graham or myself on LinkedIn, and also just to keep in touch with what's happening at the college. And if you have any ideas or suggestions for other topics, please just shoot me an email. So thank you, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you next time.